Hey everybody, this is Ashley Jones, and in this video I'm going to show you how to digitize an embroidery design when using an image as the backdrop to trace to create your design. So I'm using features from our Perfect Embroidery Pro software program, which is installed inside of my embroidery toolshed program. So to create an embroidery design, it's easiest if you have something to trace. So I'm going to bring in the image that we'll be working with. So to bring in an image as a background file, I'm going to use File and Load Backdrop. Then select my image. So this will allow you to select images like PNGs, JPEGs, bitmap images. So just select your image and click Open. And now this is a backdrop file. I can't click on it anywhere and select it. This is just merely for me to trace on top of. So when I'm tracing, I usually like to change my lightness of my backdrop just so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to do that, click apply, and so now it'll just be easier to trace on top of. Now, the first thing that you need to know is when you're tracing an image, you're still the artist. So if you don't want to trace a part, or if you want to make an adjustment as you're tracing, you can do that. It's just kind of a template to get you going. So let's start by deciding which order this is going to stitch out. If you trace it in the order you want it to stitch out, you'll have less adjusting, but if you do need to move it or the stitch order around later, you can easily do that. So for my idea would be that we would stitch the cupcake base and then the detail here, the lines in the little cupcake bottom, and then the main part of the cupcake and then the sprinkles. So I'm going to trace in that order. Now to trace the base, I'm going to show you different ways to do the tracing. So this particular base here, I'm going to trace manually. So you can trace using any of your digitizing tools here. So the type of stitch that you want this to be, you can go ahead and select it and start your tracing. For this particular instance, let's use the artwork tool. So artwork is just a tool so that you can kind of create an image that you can then digitize. It's not stitches. So I'm going to choose my artwork pen and then click my zoom tool here, and let's zoom in just to the base since that is what we're going to start tracing. So I'm going to go back and reselect my pen tool there since I clicked my zoom tool. So now I'm ready to start tracing. So I'm going to start here and then just click everywhere I want to drop a point. So these are nice and easy, they're straight lines, and then when you're ready to do the curved portion here, since it meets the top of our cupcake, I would do a little bit of overlapping. So because I want this line to be curved instead of straight, I'm going to hold down my control key every time I place a point, and you can see that point is now a circle instead of a square, and that means that it's actually a curved point, whereas our other points that we dropped were lines. So and then back to here. And then I'm going to do a right mouse click to set that tracing. So now we've traced the base of our cupcake. So I'm going to just select that. And now you could go ahead and turn this into stitches, or you can trace everything and then turn it into stitches later. I'm going to do it as we go. So for this, I'm going to make this a fill stitch. So I'm going to go down here to my effects panel and click my fill option. And now let's turn on our 3D here. So the base of our cupcake is blue and it's selected. Let's change that color. So I'm going to make it this number 18 here. So to select that color, I just did a right mouse click and change the color with it selected. Okay, so now we want to draw the detail like the lines in the base of the cupcake. So with this in place, I can't see what's behind. So I'm going to go over here to my sequence view. And I'm going to click the eyeball, which will hide those stitches. They're still there. When I want to show them again, I just click the eyeball again and it'll show them back up on the screen. Okay, so now the lines here. Now my thought process is this would be a satin stitch. So for the satin stitch, I'm actually going to use the classic satin option. And now when you're using the classic satin option, it's usually a point and a counterpoint, and then a point and a counterpoint. And then when you do your right mouse click, you can see that fills in with a satin. So I am going to undo that. That was just a little demonstration there. So for our lines here, I'm going to do a point and a counterpoint, and then go up. Since this is a straight line, it's really easy. I don't have to do a lot of clicks. And so then I'm going to do a point and a counterpoint, and then do a right mouse click and turn that into my satin stitch. So let's do that again here. So click my point, counterpoint, point. I'm going a little bit past so we have that overlap, counterpoint, and set. So keep doing that. So point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and set. That right mouse click does the set. So I'm just clicking and then do a right mouse click to set the stitches. Click, click, and whoops, I keep zooming out, sorry. Point, counterpoint, and release. Okay, so now let's zoom back in here. And then I'm going to select this last one here. It's a little bit high, so I'm just going to select it with my select tool and just move it down a little bit. Okay, so now I've got all my little stripes there, my cupcake base. And let's select all these. So over here in my sequence view tab, I'm going to select all of those, and let's make those a different color. So I'm going to do a right mouse click on number 16 here. Now your colors may be set different than mine. These are my default colors that I have set. So just, you know, choose whatever color you want. I just didn't want blue. And now if we watch our slow redraw, each one of these I started at the base, so it should start here and stitch up, go here and stitch up. And so the slow redraw, this tool right here, is our stitch simulator, and you can see each one of these stitches from the bottom up. So, and that's great, but I don't want to do, you could actually leave this as is, but I don't want to have a lot of, you know, jump stitches in here, and so I think that it's really easy to have a run stitch connector so that this will just all stitch together. So you could leave this as is, and your machine is set for a trim, I'm sure, and then you could, it would stitch, stop and trim, go and stitch, stop and trim. If you want to connect these and just make your digitizing a little bit smoother, or your machine to run a little bit smoother, let me show you what you can do. So I'm going to choose my run stitch option for this. So this is my run stitch tool. And when this one starts to stitch at the bottom here, runs up, I want it to just keep stitching, run, 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 and then run down so that this can run back up. And the satin stitches are going to cover, the top of our cupcake will cover here. So then our machine doesn't have to stop and do the trimming. You can just keep stitching. So from here, I'm going to do a click, hold down my control key, and click over here, and then I'm going to do a right mouse click to set those stitches. You could keep going down here, but I just want to show you over to the right, moving these around. So then now from here, I'm going to click, and then a right mouse click to set. And then let's continue our run over here. So click, I'm going to hold down my control key to kind of make a little bit of a curved point. And then right mouse click to set. From here, run down to the bottom, right mouse click to set, and then click, 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 right mouse click to set, and then run down, right mouse click to set, and then continue on here. So hold down my control key here will give me that curve point, and then, whoops, right mouse click to set that, and then the last one here. So my idea with this is that the satin stitch would start down here in the bottom left. It would do the satin stitch up, and then my machine wouldn't stop and trim. It would just continue to run here, and then it would run down to the base here, and then it would do the satin stitch up, run over, run down, satin stitch up. So just creating that pathing so that it just runs smoother. So now we need to put these in the right order. So I'm going to use my select tool, and then let's after this run satin stitch here, we want this run stitch to go. So if I go over here to my sequence view, so this is my first satin stitch, you can see it highlighted, and this is my first run stitch. So I'm going to click and drag this up and just drop it underneath that satin stitch, and it will all stay the same. It'll continue to run from here, and we're going to change this color too in just a moment. So after that run stitch, I want this one to run down, so my next run stitch is that second one running straight down, so I'm going to drop that underneath, and the same thing here. So now we're ready for this run stitch before this one. So this run stitch here, I'm going to click and drag and drop under the second satin stitch, and then this run stitch here, it selected my satin, so I'm going to select it here in my sequence view. Click and drag and drop that behind that run stitch. Then I want it to stitch this satin stitch, so then after that I want to do this run stitch. So I'm going to click, drag this up, and drop it right after that satin stitch, and we'll check this order just to make sure that nothing gets messed up. So the same thing here, I'm going to just keep dragging these up. You guys get the idea. And the last two here I want after that one. Okay, so now let's watch our slow redraw. So here I'm going to drag this across, so it's going to stitch up, take that run all the way over, and then the run down, up, run over and down, and then run back up, over, down, run back up, and the same. So I like that order, and I want all of those stitches to be the same color. So I'm going to select all of those blue ones. So I'm just closing everything. So let's do a right mouse click and collapse all. And so each of these blue ones I'm selecting by holding down my control key, and I'm going to make it the same color as those satin stitches. So here, this is color number 16. So do a right mouse click to change that color. So now we've kind of got that pathing in place. Okay, so if we turn on our base of our cupcake and zoom out, that's what we have so far. Okay, looks pretty good. So now the top of our cupcake, let's do a little bit different kind of tracing. So now sometimes you can use your magic wand here to trace for you, and that's what we're going to do here. This would not work on the cupcake, that's why I manually trace the bottom, but the top of the cupcake, the magic wand will work. To use the magic wand right now, it's grayed out, so you have to first select the pen tool, and then now the option becomes available. So now I click my magic wand, and you can see that my cursor now looks like a wand. I'm going to click one time somewhere in the light pink area, and you'll see that it traced that entire part for me with just that one click. So that's the absolute easiest way to digitize if it will work. It doesn't work in every case, and our base of our cupcake's one of those situations, okay? So now I'm going to go to my select tool, and I'm going to hide my image just for a second, my backdrop image here, and you can see that we've traced these. Now if I were to just click, and over here to my effects panel, if I were just to click to turn this into a fill stitch, turn on my 3D so we can see it, you can see that it has the holes for the sprinkles, whereas I wanted to trace the sprinkles separate. Well, it's traced around them, so I'm going to undo. And now to have my sprinkles separate, I'm going to do this break up options here in the top right. And now when I do the breakup, these are separate than my cupcake outline. So take my cupcake top part, click fill, and I'm going to change the color. So while it's selected, I'm going to choose this light pink here. So I'm going to do a right mouse click on number 11 to change that to the lighter pink color. So now let's go back over here to our sequence view. Remember, we can hide options to see. So I'm going to hide our parts that we've been working on here, just so we're left with what we are ready to work on. So the sprinkles that's here, they're covered up by my top of my cupcake. So I'm going to scroll down here and hide the top. So now I'm left with just my sprinkles. So now for the sprinkles, if I've hidden everything on my page, I have nothing but sprinkles. So if I do an edit and select all, then over here in my effects panel, I can click to make these all satin stitches. Okay, so super easy. Now these jump stitches you're going to be left with because if you do a run stitch in between, it'll be everywhere. So you want this to trim and then jump. So what I did was I just selected a few of these, just, random, and then changed the color so that my machine would stop and I'd have different color sprinkles here. And just like that, let's see what other color we want here. Maybe green. And the last ones here, let's make those maybe yellow. And then I've got those selected. To select multiple sprinkles, I am clicking, holding my control key, click, 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 click with the control key down. And then let's make those, our cupcake's pink, so let's make it yellow. Okay, so now I've got my sprinkles and they're all different colors. If you change your mind and say you want this one to be a different color, just select it and do a right mouse click at any time. So I think that looks pretty good. So now over here to our sequence view again, I'm going to do a right mouse click and do my view and show all, and it'll just turn everything on. So now I don't see my sprinkles. So my sprinkles are actually in the wrong order. So what I want to do is go here and I want to find my cupcake top, and I'm going to move that up in the stitch order. So what I can do just to quickly get it in that place, if I click this move to back option, and then I'm up here toward the top, but I do want the base and the stripes here to stitch first. So then my cupcake top here, I'm just going to click and drag it and drop it below the stripe so it'll be in the right order. So boom, look at that. Super cute, right? Digitized from our image. So now let's talk about one more thing. If you want this to be an applique design, let's do that. So what I'm going to do is even on my applique, I want my sprinkles to stay the same here. I'm going to select the cupcake top, go over to my effects panel, and then just click one time on the applique option. And the same thing. So I want the stripes to stay, but the cream color, if I select that and then click on my applique option, now I've got an applique cupcake, sort of. We do have to do a little additional editing. So whenever I watch this stitch out, let's take a look at what we got. It's first going to stitch the base, and it does the complete applique, and then it does our little stripes there, and then it does the cupcake top, and then all of our sprinkles. So now here's a couple of things that I see. My stripes I would like to be stitch after I do my fabric tack down and placement and tack down, and then I want this finishing stitch to be last. So now if I go over to my effects panel here, if I move this in this order here, if I just reorder, what's going to happen if we watch the slow redraw is it's going to stitch our stripes first, and then it's going to do our placement and tack down for our fabric, and we don't want that because we don't want the stripes to be underneath. So we need to move the stripes in between our tack down and the finishing stitch. So let's see how to do that. So now this is my applique piece here. If I click this plus to open it up, I don't have a separate placement and tack down, but if I look up here in my property settings, it is going to give me a placement and my tack down is set to a run. So automatically the applique gives you that feature. But if you want to see them separately, you can break them up. So if I do and once you save this, let me make this point too. So once you save this design as your machine format, we call that an expanded file type, it will separate those pieces so your machine sees them separate, but while we're digitizing, it just sees it as an applique. But sometimes we need to see them at the separate pieces. So if I select it, do a right mouse click and say break up path, you can see that now I have my placement, tack down, and my finishing stitch separate. So now this allows me to take my stripes and just move them in between. So if we watch our slow redraw again, I'm going to get my placement and my tack down for my fabric. It's then going to do my little decorative stripes there, and then it'll do that finishing stitch, and then the rest of my applique. So that's exactly what I need. One last thing I would like to point out is that satin stitch at the top there. So if I hide my cupcake top, I don't want this satin stitch here underneath. If I just want the run for the placement and the tack down, and then the top of the cupcake is going to cover that edge, so I don't need that satin stitch under the edge. So let's hide this, and I'm actually going to hide our lines as well, and then these placement and tack down, just so we don't accidentally undo anything that we've done. So let's separate this out and take away this satin stitch. So what you're going to do is choose your shape tool and then click on your cupcake base. I'm going to zoom in here. With my shape tool selected, I am going to click, let's start over here. I'm going to click on that corner point, do a right mouse click, and say split line. And then we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to click on this point on the corner, right mouse click, and split line. So now you can see that it actually just broke these two pieces up. So I'm going to do a right mouse click, make sure it's set, and then with my selection tool, see how I can now select these separate parts. So I'm going to delete this top part. Okay, so now I just have the base. So let's turn our parts and pieces back on here. And our cupcake top, and then let's zoom out and watch our slow redraw. So as we stitch, we're going to get our tack down, our placement, and our tack down for our base. So we put our fabric there. Then it's going to do our decorative lines, the creases in our cupcake paper, and then it's going to do that nice finishing stitch. And notice how it stops here and does not do that next satin stitch across there. So the next thing that's going to happen is a placement for the top, tack down, and then a finishing stitch for the top of the cupcake, and then all of my sprinkles. So the last thing I would say here is just all of these different color changes for the different sprinkles. So I would do one last thing, and that is an edit and resequence by color. So then now when we watch our stitch out, it's going to put all the sprinkles that are the same color together, so I don't have as many color changes. So we get to the end here, all of our turquoise, all of the green, and then all of the yellow sprinkles. So that's how you digitize a design from an image. Hope you enjoyed this video.